And now, live from Level 5 Productions on the island of Milleronia, it's The Larry Miller Show. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and everyone who just still can't handle St. Patrick's Day. Hi, folks, and welcome back to the Larry Miller Show. I'm Larry Miller, but in a way, aren't we all? And boy, oh boy, is it good to be back here on Milleronia. It's my favorite place, and yes, I know I built it. Yes, I know I run it with an iron hand, but I think it has a velvet glove on it, too. It's got to be a description from some old movie somewhere. An iron hand with a velvet glove. I don't even know what it means, but that's me. And boy, oh boy, it's a beautiful day here. Yes, I control the weather, but it's still beautiful. And it really means a lot to be here. And of course, that music makes me and the Colonel very happy. That's the Jimmy Breslin Orchestra and the Addie Grilly Dancers, featuring boy tenor Chuck Berry, asking the musical question, Maybelline, why can't you be true? And, well, it was worth it to mention those great names, and I want to tell you, first of all, Chuck Berry, as you probably know, just passed away, last week, and he was up there. I can't remember his actual age. It was something like 97, wasn't it? 90, something like that. The Colonel says 90, so it must be 90. That's not his IQ, that's his age. And boy, oh boy, you know, and the Maybelline was one of his great hits. And how important was he, by the way, to pop music and to rock and roll, that John Lennon once said that if you were looking to rename rock and roll, you could just call it Chuck Berry. And that's the way everyone felt about Chuck Berry, especially, good Lord, with John Lennon and the Beatles and all the Rolling Stones and everyone in music just adored him. And well, they would just, you're on their knees to him. And Chuck, boy, he did that dance where he could duck walk, I think they called it. He could go across the stage, sort of kicking one leg out in front of him as he's playing guitar and shuffling each step on the back leg. But boy, folks, you know what? Maybelline, why can't you be true? And Johnny B. Goode, what a composer, what a presence, what a leader, what a change maker, what a great talent. And he will be singing now and writing now. Well, he'll be writing in heaven with God. And Chuck Berry. Good for you, Chuck. And I hope your loved ones and your family and your friends are all smiling and saying nice things about you. And that's, by the way, that's an old Jewish saying that, you know, where someone goes after, well, in heaven, after he dies, where people wind up, it's all based on what others say about them after they died. And I think that's a very nice way to put it. I think that's a great thought. And I mentioned, of course, well, God bless him, Jimmy Breslin, the Jimmy Breslin Orchestra. And Jimmy Breslin, I'll bet you know about Chuck Berry, but I sure hope you know about Jimmy Breslin, too. He was one of the greatest writers, mainly known as a columnist in New York starting in 1962 for the Herald Tribune, which was a great newspaper and we read that in elementary school. And I loved it, the New York Herald Tribune, but then it went out of business, well, right after I started loving it, I think. And the Herald Tribune, and then the Journal American, and the Press, I think the Long Island Press, too. These were all top papers. And then for Daily News for a long time, New York's Picture newspaper, which it said on top, I hope it still says that, because that's a great way to describe yourself, especially in the newspaper market. New York's Picture newspaper. All right, I'll buy that. And the paper we always got also where I grew up, we got from the time I was a baby till we all moved away or passed away. And that was Newsday. But Jimmy Breslin, boy, oh boy, he was so well known and so popular, and he deserved to be. And he wrote many books also. And folks, I've got to tell you, pick up a couple of these books. They are so good. Books like World Without End, Amen, and Table Money. Table Money is a terrific book. And the biography he wrote of Damon Runyon, A Life. And he wrote one called also, I Want to Thank My Brain for Remembering Me, which was a memoir about, his brain surgery that he needed in it says here in the Times, 1994 or 84. Something with a 4. At any rate, though, and my favorite book of his, which is a terrific comedy, Jimmy Breslin, so funny, but the comedy was The Gang That Couldn't Shoot Straight, which was made into a movie, and with Jerry Orbach. Golly, God bless him, he's passed on too. And these are people I really, really cared about and really admired. And Jimmy Breslin, boy, oh boy, funny man. And by the way, he was on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson many times when that was still shot in New York. And he would go on there. And my dad loved Jimmy Breslin too, and so did my mom. And we would stay up for The Tonight Show to watch when Jimmy Breslin was on. He always talked about, terrific. He had a great New York accent, but on him it sounded like silk. It sounded like like it was running by in the smoothest way. And he would tell stories and all the things that he based his fiction on and based his columns on. Real people all over Queens. And in fact, the columnist out here for the Los Angeles Times, Jack Smith, once said about Jimmy Breslin, he introduced Queens to the rest of America. And it's sure true. Jimmy Breslin. And he would tell jokes. He had a list of characters he's just a funny man. He had a list of characters, and they were all low-grade characters, as it said, Damon Runyon type characters such as Fat Thomas, who was a 450-pound bookmaker, Jerry the Booster, a shoplifter, Bad Eddie, who, quote, doesn't do anything nice, unquote, and Marvin the Torch. Marvin, it says here as a description that Breslin wrote, Marvin the Torch never could keep his hands off of somebody else's business, particularly if the business was losing money. Now, this is accepted behavior in Marvin's profession, which is arson. And, boy, Breslin could make any of this funny. I remember he told a joke on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson there about Marvin the Torch, who was hired to, burn down someone's business that wasn't doing well, and it was a business right in between two other businesses, and it was a 4-story building, and all I remember is that the guy's with him there across the street watching. The guy says it's supposed to be at 10 o'clock. It's going to happen. And the guy's saying to Marvin, is this all right? It hasn't happened yet. What's going on? Is anything wrong? And Marvin would say, wait, just wait. And as the couple of minutes went by and it got 10 o'clock and then 10:05, and the guy said, I know I should have done something else. Why hasn't it gone up yet? And Marvin would say, wait. And eventually the building went up, though, with a huge mushroom cloud. And Marvin turned to the guy and said, nuclear. And that's how good Marvin the Torch was. But at any rate, Jimmy Breslin, God bless him, he was great. Please buy a couple of those books. You'd love them. Table Money is terrific. And his biography of Damon Runyon, it's worth so much to put your time into. And folks, well, the first one could be The Gang That Couldn't Shoot Straight. You'd love it. What a funny man he was, and how he portrayed the mob in New York and all these guys. He described one of them as it was a big mob boss. And I remember one of his lines was, he died naturally when the 7 men who snuck into his bedroom stuck knives into his heart. Maybe I got a word or two wrong about that. But that's just Breslin. So you know what? God bless you, Chuck, and God bless you, Jimmy. I think all of us could appreciate and respect Chuck Berry, but boy, oh boy, I loved Jimmy Breslin every second I knew him. Well, I didn't know him personally, but every second I read his work and his books and his columns. I'm sorry that they're gone, but I'm proud to say that about both of them right now. And by the Larry Miller Store. That's right. Today, I want you to go to the Larry Miller Store. And you get there, by the way, how do you think? First of all, you go to our website, which is LarryMillerPodcast.com. Who's on the mountain? Tom Mix. Oh, I'm sorry. I should have had the fish. At any rate, it's a terrific thing. By the way, so go to our website, and we have a link up at the top. Now, by saying that, it sounds like I know what I'm talking about, but I checked with the colonel beforehand. Was it a flag or a banner? And he said, slowly, the way you talk to a first grader who's not quite right. And he said, there's a link at the top that they can go to. And I said, oh, all right. And he was nodding along as I nodded along, just desperately trying to remember that. But do that, folks. You know what? Go to our link there to the Larry Miller Store. We have 3 great T-shirt designs, and they're available for gentlemen and ladies and even doggies. And that's the truth. Our doggie has one. And you know what? Click on the store link on our website. You're going to be glad you did. And we're going to be glad you did, by the way. We're going to be very glad. So thank you in advance. Go to the Larry Miller Store, get a T-shirt, get a dog shirt. And we have lots of other things there, right? No, the colonel just shook his head. The hats? Don't we have the hats there? No. You know what, folks? Get a T-shirt today, and then I'll let you know when we have all the other terrific things there. And it's going to be soon, easily within 10 or 12 years. So go to our website and press the link to the Larry Miller Store. Whew, I got that straight. And I think I'm going to get a gold star for it. Thank you, Colonel. Thank you, Principal Fox. Well, folks, that brings me to my favorite part of the show, the joke of the week. Boy, oh boy. And this is a good one. The Colonel and I both like this one, and it's nice and silly too. And I think it's great for the show today, so I hope you like it. Jacob, 97, is dying. He's in his house and he's in his bed, and well, you know, that's it. 97 is pretty good, but it's sad. He's dying, and he, with a weak voice, he says, "Where's my wife, Elena?" And she says, "Here, darling, I'm right here." And he says, "Oh, good. This is good. Okay. And what of my son, Abraham?" "Right here, father." "You're a good boy. You're a good boy. And what about my darling daughter, Sarah?" "Yes, Papa," she says with tears. "I love you." And the man says, "Well, what about my grandchildren, Ezekiel and Ruth, Emmanuel, Seraphina, Bartholomew?" "And all here," they say in unison, "all here, Grandpapa." And so he says, "So all my family's here with me now?" And his wife says, yes, Jacob, we're all here. And then he says, so why is the light on in the kitchen? So it's just such I love that line. So why is the light on in the kitchen? Okay, he says, in effect, he's saying, all right, so I'm passing on. So I'm going to be judged by God, and I hope I get a great spot in heaven. But no, seriously, after all these years, why is the light still on in the kitchen? Nobody's smart enough to do that, especially today, knowing that it's going to annoy me. Well, I hope you like that one, folks. The Colonel and I both do. And please pass that on to a friend or loved one. And that'll make the joke of the week, well, worth the whole week. And that brings me to my second favorite part of the show, the Poetry Corner. Boy, still the best string quartet anywhere in the world, I think. I should thank them for that. Or at least promise not to throw them down the volcano. Oh, I did that already, didn't I? I promise I won't. Let me promise again. I promise I won't sentence them to going down volcano number 1 or number 2 or number 3. And yes, they get worse as the numbers get higher. Now, entre nous, folks. If they do anything that really annoys me, they're going down that volcano anyway. But they're, I'm kidding when I say that. That's for them to hear that I'm kidding when I say that. I'll let you know, though, because I'm not kidding. I run a very strict island here. This is a great poem, by the way, and it's written by Banjo Paterson. It's called A Dog's Mistake. Banjo Paterson, by the way, was another great Australian poet, one of the Australian bush poets. And that means, well, you know what that means. He came from the bush, and he lived in Australia from 1864 to 1941. And he got his name from his pseudonym, the Banjo, which was his favorite horse. And get this, folks, I didn't know this because I hadn't heard the name till the Colonel brought us on to him here. And in his lifetime, he was second only to Rudyard Kipling in popularity of living poets writing in English. Now, that's pretty good. Rudyard Kipling, God bless him, is just fantastic, wonderful. And Banjo, it was second only to him. So good for you, Banjo, or good on you, as I think they might say in Australia, right? And this is one of his called A Dog's Mistake. He had drifted in among us as a straw drifts with the tide. He was just a wandering mongrel from the weary world outside. He was not aristocratic, being mostly ribs and hair, with a hint of spaniel parents and a touch of native bear. He was very poor and humble and content with what he got, so we fed him bones and biscuits till he heartened up a lot. Then he growled and grew aggressive, treating orders with disdain, till at last he bit the butcher, which would argue want of brain. Now the butcher, noble fellow, was a sport beyond belief, and instead of bringing actions, he brought half a shin of beef, which he handed on to Fido, who received it as a right, and removed it to the garden where he buried it at night. 'Twas the means of his undoing, for my wife, who'd stood his friend, to adopt a slang expression, went in off the deepest end. For among the pinks and pansies, the gloxinias and the gorse, he had made an excavation like a graveyard for a horse. Then we held a consultation which decided on his fate. 'Twas in anger more than sorrow that we led him to the gate. And we handed him the beef bone as provision for the day. Then we opened wide the portal and we told him, "On your way." Well, that's a terrific poem, isn't it? Certainly not a happy ending for the dog, by the way. They couldn't just say, "Oh, come on. He's just a dog who wandered in." Well, I guess not. Even the kindly butcher said, "You're gone." In any case, though, thank you to Banjo Peterson. It's a terrific poem, A Dog's Mistake. And that brings me to my third favorite part of the show, MMM, Triple M, the Magic Movie Moment. Oh, greatest piano player in the world. And you know what? This is a terrific movie, folks. And I hope you've seen it. It's called Hombre from 1967. Hombre, it was one of the 3 H movies that Paul Newman starred in at the time. They were called the H movies. There were 3 of them. Hombre, HUD, and The Hustler. Boy, those are all great movies, wonderful movies. But Hombre, boy, oh boy, does that have a stamp on it. It's such an interesting Western, directed by Martin Ritt, starring Paul Newman, Richard Boone, Frederick March, Barbara Rush, Martin Balsam, Cameron Mitchell, David Canary, and Diane Cilento, who was just great in this and beautiful. The cast is much bigger than that, by the way. Oh boy, they were all wonderful. And this takes place, well, in the Wild West. And Paul Newman plays as a young white boy, as a kid, he was wonderful. And they say this in the synopsis of the story. He was separated from his parents by the Apaches, and they raised him as one of their own. And you can go by that without thinking. And today it finally struck me: separated. He was separated from his parents. What does that mean? Well, I think you know what it means. It means they decided to separate him from the parents. Well, as soon as the parents, accidentally passed away after being chopped into pieces by the Apaches. But at any rate, it's a great movie, folks. And Paul Newman is trying to, as John Russell, is trying to get by in the world. And one of his relatives, who hadn't been chopped to pieces, gave him in his will, when the relative died, a boarding house in this town. And that's how we begin to meet all these other people. And, well, Diane Cilento plays the manager of the boarding house, and they all want... I fell for her as soon as I saw her. I don't know, I'm sorry of all the other things she's been in, but wow, boy, oh boy, she was a terrific actress, and just a beautiful woman. And I think she's playing a woman who's about 35 or somewhere between 35 and 40 in the movie. And just beautiful, though. You loved her. And she knows she's got to look for something new in life, too. But, folks, this story, this great story, and Frank Silvera as a great bad guy. Oh, Richard Boone is such a great actor. They are all so good. And they get to a point in it. And I don't want to, ruin anything for you, but there's going to be a robbery of the stagecoach they're all on. That Paul Newman and Richard Boone and Diane Cilento and Frederick March and the woman who plays his wife in the movie, the young, lovely Barbara Rush, and Martin Balsam as one of Paul Newman's old friends. And they're on the stagecoach, and it gets robbed. And I'm not going to tell you by who. And Paul Newman, as John Russell, is so tough. He goes up. He knows what life is like. He's not going to complain about anything. But he winds up, one of the crooks says to him, where are you going? Because he's going up on top of the stage there. Well, just to get his bag. And the guy says, all right. And that's where, well, Paul pulls out. He also has a Winchester rifle up there. And he pulls that out, and bam, bam, he just kills two of the bad guys right away. And the other bad guys had started away. They've ridden away already. But Paul Newman kills these two and takes the money from them that they had stolen. And I won't tell you by whom and from whom and what the guy did to get it. And you know what, folks, that starts, the bad guys are going to come back. And they're going to chase Paul Newman and all the other folks. And the other folks, by the way, Frederick March wouldn't even let Paul Newman sit in the stage with them because he'd been raised by Indians. And that's the level they lived on. So Paul Newman had to sit on top there, but he leads them now, and he knows how to go, and he knows how to survive, and he knows how to not get killed. And they get to the mining cabin at a mine, and it's deserted, and there's no one there. And, well, the bad guys all gather at the bottom, and they want their money, and they want it bad, and they'll do anything for it. And Paul Newman says, absolutely not. It's not going to happen. If we go down there, look, they'll just kill us anyway, and this is not going to happen. And, well, Diane Cilento, who plays the landlady, the manager of the boarding house, and she wants to give them the money, give the bad guys the money. And she stands up to do that and to leave the cabin. And this is after Paul Newman has told them it's never going to happen. And as she does that, Paul Newman was so good in this movie, and the way he acted. Oh, so good. And then, well, he, as John Russell, stands up too and takes the money from her in that cabin. And he's going to do the delivery himself because only he knows what this means. He and you and I know what this means because when Jesse, that's the boarding house manager, when Jesse says, I just wanted to have a chance, Newman says, you want a lot more than that. And we know that he knows. Boy, he delivers that so beautifully. You want a lot more than that. And no one even knows what that means, including Jesse Brown, played by Diane Cilento. As beautiful as she is. I just want us to have a chance. Newman says, no, you want a lot more than that. He knows he's putting his life on the line, and it doesn't look good. And you and I know that too. It's a great magic movie moment in a movie that's full of them, frankly. See it sometime, folks. Hombre, directed by Martin Ritt, starring Paul Newman, Richard Boone, Frederick March, Barbara Rush, Martin Balsam, all great actors, Cameron Mitchell, David Canary, and Diane Cilento. I fell in love with her when I was 9 years old when I first saw that movie, and I just always adored her every time I've seen it since, which has got to be 30 or 40 times. Diane, I hope you're still well. You were great and gorgeous. And, well, you have Larry Miller on Milleronia, who still loves you. I hope you do too, folks. You know what, by the way? It means so much to find the one thing like that. Is that a little thing? No, it's not. Are magic movie moments small things? No, they're not. If you love them and if they really matter to you, and if they really click something in you, they're big. My older boy, who I know I've told you is a Marine, and he got back from his first 6 months service in the Middle East. And remember, I was asked not to mention where. And, well, he did a great job. And, thank goodness my wife and I were fine with that. And he did a great job. He's a great Marine and came back safely. And so I didn't worry at all the way I thought I would. Well, I was worried, but not the way I thought I would be. And folks, he came back and he went through his debriefing and then came to stay with us for a couple of weeks before he had to sign on again and sign in again and go back to base, which he did last Thursday night. So it's coming up to about a week ago. And I was just thrilled to see him and thrilled that we watched TV together, and he would watch the TV and I'd watch him. And you know what, folks? It wasn't the real worrying and the hand-wringing I thought it would be. And I said to him, the next day he went back Thursday night. I said, so you're working tomorrow, Friday? And he said, no. He said, I just have to sign in the morning. And then I'm going back to work. I think he said his first shift was Sunday and when he was on duty. And I said, oh, all right, so what are you doing tomorrow? And he said, well, I'm going with a couple of my friends, a couple of other Marines, and we're going to drive down to San Diego for the St. Patrick's Day Parade and the St. Patrick's Day Festival. And that terrified me. I don't know about you, but I was fine with him, going to war. And that was okay. But having just turned 21, like his other Marine pals, who had also just turned 21 a week or two before, and now they're going down to the St. Patrick's Day Parade, that scared me. I said, you what? Wait, you what? You what? You go, and now I didn't want to be the annoying father. I guess I kind of am. I think that's part of the job of being a father. But you know what? And he said, yeah, we're going down there. And so I didn't want to say anything on the order of, what are you, crazy? Because he's not. He wants to do that. I did that. I went to, when I was his age, sure, I went to St. Patrick's Day parades in New York. This was from where I grew up on Long Island. And in fact, my senior year in high school, I went with my friends Chuck and Bob, and we decided we were going to, cut school and wanted to go to the St. Patrick's Day Parade in Manhattan. And those were big parades. They were great. And we asked our moms first. Our dads were at work, and we asked our moms, and our moms said, version what I said of, you what? But they were okay. They said, okay. And there are some rules, it was great. Bob, he came from a great family. He's a good man. I like him still, and Chuck too. But Bob's mom said to him, remember the 3 rules? And they had rules for him. I can only remember 2 of them. That first of all, don't come home drunk. Second of all, no one gets pregnant. And even though when you're 16 or so, you say, what, why, what? But that makes good sense too. Yeah, and that's good to have as a rule. I can't even remember the 3rd one. Nothing. Don't eat sausages you just got in the street. That wasn't it, but it was something like that. And you know what? We drove a car. It was, I think, my parents' Ford station wagon, and drove the three of us into Queens and parked it in Queens, so that where Jimmy Breslin was from, and then we were going to just take the subway into Manhattan. And we did that, folks. It was a beautiful day. And I mean, a great parade. And it reminded me, I'm telling you now that maybe I mentioned this before, but I used to watch the parade on TV as a kid, just growing up. And I loved when they showed the cops marching by in full uniform and the firemen marching by in full uniform too, their dress uniforms. And boy, the cops were great. They were the Hibernian Society, I think it's called. It's all the Irish cops, which is to say all of them. But I mean, they were marching by, and I used to love as a kid. They love this parade. They're happy. They're smiling, and they're proud. And then it dawned on me by the time I was 10 or 11, I used to look a little closer because the camera was just, 15 feet away as they're marching, big long ranks marching under the camera. It was halfway between a walk and a march. And then I finally, it hit me as I looked at the faces. Hey, wait a minute. They're drunk. They're like not a little bit tipsy. I mean, loaded. Even at 11, I just knew what that look was. It was like they were made up to look that way. The faces were, and God bless them, they're tough guys and they're protecting everybody. But on St. Patrick's Day, even in their full uniforms, those cheeks were red as lobsters and the eyes were red and swimming a little bit. And those smiles weren't that steady. And I'm just telling you, the same with the firemen. I'm just saying, how do you like that? Get a load of that. They're, celebrating. No reason not to, but it hit me as a kid on Long Island at 10 that, holy moly, they're not kidding around there in that parade. And we had a great time there that day. And by the way, there was it won't surprise you, there's hundreds of thousands, 1 million kids just like us who drove from, New Jersey or Rockland County in New York or Long Island, just the way we did, and then took the subway in. So this is, a lot of people. And regular folks who were just there lined up to watch the parade. And Chuck needed the bathroom. I mean, we noticed, Bob and I, when we went to one of the Korean fruit places, we went to the bathroom. It was over on Lexington Avenue, I think, and we went to get, a couple of six-packs and for the three of us. And it was only the second or third time we went to do that. But the guy was all right in the Korean place. He let me and Bob use the bathroom there because they don't let people in the, not surprising. I don't blame them for this. If you have 1 million extra 16-year-olds just jamming into Fifth Avenue in Manhattan to watch the parade and drink beer, you know what? If you own a fancy restaurant along Fifth Avenue, you don't want those kids in there 15 at a time. I understand that. Look, the kids have to pee. I was one of them. You'd be one of them. But the owner of, the nice white tablecloth places doesn't want you in there. And because he's got other folks there. So I think that's, everyone's right in that case. But I remember Chuck said, no, I'm all right. He didn't have to go. And so Bob and I went. But, an hour later, Chuck really needed to go and he couldn't find a place. We walked around with him. We couldn't find a place that would let us in. And he really, then, another 20 minutes after that and another 40 minutes after that, he was really in trouble. It's like, the old saying, when you got to go, you got to go. And he said, I can't, I got to go. I can't wait. And we said, we're with you. I understand. And so he peed on the Metropolitan Museum of Art, which is on Fifth Avenue. You've seen it. You all know it because you've seen it in every single movie that's ever been made about Manhattan or Fifth Avenue. It's a gorgeous museum. It's a fabulous museum. And our friend, there was a little, right in front, by the way. There's millions of people 8 feet behind you. But he had to go. So he just leaned into, there was a tiny, tiny little intersect, a little corner of, not on the corner of the building, but right in front. And as soon as he started going, this was already a big P. I'm just telling you that he started, and he had to go. And the second he started, a photographer from Life magazine came up behind him, and he's got the card and the hat, Life magazine, and he's got those newspaper cameras that are, have to be held. They're pretty big cameras. And with those giant flash bulbs, that go off. And this was only about 2 or 3 in the afternoon. But he took some pictures of Chuck just like that from behind. You couldn't tell him. You couldn't tell who it was. But, folks, that posture he was in would have been recognized by anyone from Jupiter or Mars. People would have just said, oh, he's got to be peeing. It's the posture of, your left hand is higher than your head, leaning against the museum wall with the left hand, and you're leaning forward 3 or 4 degrees, and your other hand isn't visible because it's in front of you. Enough said. It's in front of you. And we thought it was the greatest thing in the world. We really did. And you know what? It was in there to see. We thought it was the greatest picture in the world. Well, that's the kind of thing, first of all, that boys at our age loved. And maybe you do too. We all would have done the same thing. And I want that clear. You know it anyway. Let's be honest. When you gotta go, you gotta go. And this was St. Patrick's Day. And in New York City especially, I didn't ask my kid yet. I said, how'd it go on St. Patrick's Day in San Diego? He said, it was great. Oh, it was great. Well, he got a car. He has a car. It's not a fancy car, but it's a car. It wasn't new, it was used, but it's great. It's just perfect for him, and he needs a car. And so they drove down and back to the base. And boy, it reminded me, folks, though, of I had stories too. And there's no better place. Well, I grew up there, but I think there's no better place than in New York City, whether it's St. Patrick's Day or not. I'm telling you, folks, that I had so many stories. At Yankee Stadium one year, I went with a couple of my friends. We were comedians already. And by the way, speaking of St. Patrick's Day, this was a place, one of the owners of the comic strip in New York, which is on 2nd Avenue. It's a great place. That was our home club. And I was bartending there during the days at that point, 3 days a week. And one of them was St. Patrick's Day. And these guys, well, loved making a good living, and they wanted to make their money that way. And they were Irish themselves, but they just said, he came to me the night before at the show. And he said to me, listen, tomorrow, don't let anyone in. That was on St. Patrick's Day. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, don't let anyone in. Because I knew, though, that that's where the parade ended. You know, comic strips on 81st, where the parade ends on, was it 86th Street or 96th Street? And at that point, all the cops and all the firemen start winding down to go down 2nd Avenue, and they want another couple of beers. Because, they're loopy anyway. Their faces are pretty shiny already, and they don't want to stop. Nothing wrong with that. And so, this owner said, no, you don't let anyone in. I said, but John, I think it's going to be crowds. I think we could really do some business here. And he said, for a guy who loved doing business, he just said, no business, no one. You listen to me. Look at me. Look at me. Don't open that door for anyone. Keep it locked, and that's that. And you know what? Turns out he was right, because they were looking through the windows, and when they came down, they wanted to come in there, and I had to shrug to them and say, I can't open it up. But he was right. There would have been 20, 50, 100, 1,000 cops and firemen in there. Where you just put 3 or 4 bottles of Jameson's on the bar and glasses all around it, and they know how to do the rest. So would you and I. And but you know what? Because we had people. My friend Foley had friends used to come by, and they were all cops. Used to come by to the comic strip and during the day and early. This is before the show started, and boy, they were great. They were so much fun to be around, and they never smoked pot or anything like that, but they sure could drink. And they weren't in uniform, but they were going to be in a couple hours. They used to, holy mackerel, they could, I don't want to say any names and embarrass anyone, but they could drink. And they'd go into the showroom, by the way. And that's where, in addition to being a comedian, I was the drummer for the club. So I would go up with Cliff Corman, who was the piano player, and we'd have our little band backing up the singers. And you know what? They would, so these guys who were all cops would go into the showroom to be on the stage. It's empty. There's no one there. Only I'm there. And they would go up on the stage where everything was. My drums were, and they would. I still don't even know why, but they'd take my drumsticks, and I'd have 8 or 10, different drumsticks there for different needs. But this was one specific need. They'd take my drumsticks, drop their pants, and put them up their butts. I mean, only a couple inches, I guess, but long enough to hold. And then they would they would duck walk around the stage, and just like that, and whoop, and their friends were in there applauding because they were putting on a show. And everybody went in there and it was funny. They were laughing, and so was I. I was laughing. It was funny. I didn't use those drumsticks that night, but I was telling the colonel that, no, I took those drumsticks with sort of rags wrapped around my hands. What would you do? And I just tossed them out. I didn't wash them off. I just tossed them out, and then went to the nearest music store before the show to get new drumsticks. And after that, I didn't leave the drumsticks out again. But they were great guys. And then, in fact, they took me a couple of times. Once with them, they were going on sort of a friends' night, for cops. There was 6 of us, and they invited me along. We went to a Central Park concert. And they have a precinct right in Central Park there. Everybody knows everyone. They don't stop at a lot of red lights, by the way. That may not come as a great shock, but they don't. And I wouldn't say anything because I think you'd sound like a pretty big idiot if you said, "Say, shouldn't you be stopping at that red light?" You'd get a couple of faces turning around and looking at you, and well, they'd probably stick you up their butts. At any rate, but they were great guys. And I remember they took me to this one concert, and you know what? There was a girl for each of us. They knew a bunch of girls that they hadn't, they're not girlfriends, but the girls really wanted to be with them because they were cops and they were cool and they were handsome and they had those great cop mustaches, and they invited me along, and the women loved that they were cops and loved that the one I was with, and we're still, by the way, in a car, which is a 3-seater thing, and the one I was with, first of all, I was thrilled. You know what? And she was pretty, and she was very happy to be with me. She really liked me. But she liked me because she thought I was a cop too. And she would hold my arm in the car there and just kind of rub it in in a friendly way. I mean, very friendly. And she was just glowing, and she loved, and she said, boy, can you imagine when we get there and people won't know you have your ankle holster with one of your extra guns there. They really thought that was cool, that they were all cops. Now, I wasn't a cop, and I just said, well, I'm not a cop. In fact, I don't have a gun with me. And I was proud to say this. I'm a comedian at the comic strip, and I'm the drummer there too. And I thought that was pretty cool. And I still think it is, but it wasn't so cool to her. She didn't get a big kick out of it at all, and she was, well, that was the last of the arm rubbing for that. But I didn't mind. I didn't blame her. Well, she wanted to be with a cop. And whether they were all going to have sort of fun on one date there and go off somewhere, because, well, these guys could go anywhere. They'd go to hotels and each get a room. And if you said the same thing as the red lights, if you said, so how do you pay for the rooms? They'd look at you. Pay for the rooms? What are you talking about? What's wrong with him? We're not paying for the rooms. But folks, it was terrific. She thought I was a cop too, and that I had my spare gun on my ankle. There's really nothing better than those memories. And I wouldn't trade them for the world. But you know that. And I know that. And you know and I know a lot of the same things. That Homer is Homer and Pluto is a planet. And so remember, folks, as always, if you walked out of bed today and had a job to go to and a home to come back to and someone there who cares about you, folks, the game's over and you've won. And you don't need an ankle holster to know that. Be well, and we'll see you here next time.